discussion as we wait to see what the second, conversation about it then will be, and whether indeed the members of parliament are going to heed, to perhaps the pressure, if you'd want to call it, from the executive or the pressure from the people. Are Kenyans really keen on making sure that this document is amended? Or perhaps it is just propaganda? Is there some element of truth when you see some of them hitting the streets, to challenge that very document, saying that it would be proper for us to speak of an amendment before it proceeds to be declared law? So those are the conversations that we'll be having right here. There's so much also on the question of education, so much on the question of climate, there's so much on the question of health, and we discuss all this right here. First things first, the newspaper. I was just looking at this very story about the police commissioners or the commission that has rejected promotions that have been done by Koome. It's one of the stories that finds itself on all the pages or the front pages of the papers this morning, the Standard newspaper as well as the Daily Nation. This is it. Police wars and NPS disowns IG Koome's promotions. And so it will be interesting to watch what plays out on this. And we are looking at around 4. That is a story that is on page 4, as I have said. And the question is that Koome has said his actions were guided by the Constitution, but the NPSC's chairman warned that they had not ratified the promotions. And so the National Police Service Commission disowns this promotion of close to about 100 senior police officers, which of course was announced by Inspector General of Police Japheth Koome. Is it a police wars, as you'd want to term it? Well, definitely we'll be looking forward to this developing story, just so we know then what plays out. Mr. Koome, that is sometime on Monday, announced the elevation of about senior police officers, about 100 in the rank of police superintendent and above. But then after, hours later, this announcement was quashed by the National Police Service Commission. What could be informing this? When Koome says it is something that he did based on the Constitution, and the other entity, that is NPS, argues otherwise. We'll be following up to update you on that. This also on this side of security, and equally on the questions of money. Ruto's Pie Master and Moneyman picks approved, and this is a story captured on page 13, perhaps one that many would have expected, upon the enjoyment of a majority, but of all, or the most important thing, the fact that, well, the government is keen on making sure that they work closely with the allies that perhaps understand this specific docket, but of importance are perhaps the best men that would have been picked by the president, and therefore successfully, when they get to this very particular dockets, we're talking about NIS as well as Central Bank. It will be important for Kenyans to keenly watch what these gentlemen would do to make sure that they turn the specific entities for the betterment of the nation. Tax and traders face 1 million fine or jail, a story captured on the business page. And also it's basically the conversation on taxes that is on the Finance Bill 2023, but of importance, the budget that is slated to be read in the presence of Parliament. That is on the 15th of this month. And the conversation on taxes and what fines people are supposed to take, on how then you file your taxes, and numerous other conversations revolving around that is on. And we'll certainly also be trying to unpack the same as we continue with the broadcast. Revealed, Kemsa wrote blame game. And yes, it's been a conversation of blame game after the PS who was fired comes out to say that, well, it wasn't me, and perhaps says that in as much as she might not have any powers to challenge what it is, what action the president took by firing her, well, perhaps it would be important that she gets a fair hearing. That is Josephine Amburu. Let's read what she says. I was not involved. The procurement process had started, and I was told the new government, that is Kenya Kwanza, had to continue with it. I believe the staff advised properly, and she says she acted upon that advice, like she also claims or says that she learned of her dismissal, that is at the point from the media, and equally she acknowledging that the president was acting based on the advice that was accorded to him. And Daniel Rono says, as technically green, I got the tendering ongoing when I got into the office. as the new chair, KEMSA board was not in control of the tender, and we never sat to deliberate on it. And so this is just basically what is there, and we'll be keenly following up on the very same matter, even as we look at the face that has, or the man that has taken up the mantle of the KEMSA board, and we seek to see just whether then they're going to address the underlying issues, but of importance, whether then this, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps would get their very own justice, as they would say. You're talking about 3.7 billion mosquito net procurement mess that played out sometime last month. And, you know, this basically the first scandal under the Ruto administration, under the Ruto watch, that depends after suspended government officials speaking for the very first time, and of course pass the buck between each other and the agencies. This is a developing story. We'll be here to make sure that you get the updates of the same. The Daily Nation, Koome, police promotions illegal, NPSC, that we have also looked at, is a story captured on the back page of the Daily Nation, and a developing one, and we'll equally be following up closely on the same to keep you up to tabs. And this one, yes, here we are. Finance bill, members of parliament on horns of a dilemma. Story captured on page 8, a developing story. We'll be looking at that. And this one also that has been developing for quite a while now. Shakahola land to be turned into monument, says Kindiki, even as the exhumation process continues, as well as, you know, we get to those moments of postmortems being conducted and investigations on why and how these heinous acts were conducted on these numerous bodies. We're now talking about 240 something bodies that have already been exhumed, and of course was those ones that have been, you know, rescued, which is perhaps a good thing, but then again not in the best shape. This one is an interesting story. First Lady cycles to conference. First Lady, that is Rachel Ruto, cycles from State House, Nairobi to Gigiri for the United Nations Habitat Assembly yesterday. A story captured on page 2 and 3. Those ones who know the First Lady would understand that she is a, you know, person who loves cycling so much. So perhaps this is a sport she enjoys, you know, involving herself in. And of course she walks or marched into this Gigiri moment, you know, in the spirit of saying, let us preserve the environment. Let us be part of this conversation of preservation of the environment on arrival. And of course, we're talking about her alongside 30 other cyclists who had accompanied her. Ms. Ruto was welcomed by members of the Global Alliance of Cities for Road Safety. Well, that one is quite interesting piece, but equally of importance is the conversation on just how best we deal with the climate at a time where, you know, on Monday we were celebrating the World Environment Day. And Shakahola land to be turned into monument. I think that we have already picked away from this. The big story is on education. Schools face closure over funds delay, and they say, well, if you're not going to address this, then I'm afraid we might have to go to a point of closing the schools. Of course, they're calling upon the ministry to disburse the capitation funds to schools. We certainly hope that the cash crunch will be, you know, addressed. So we have fears and anxiety that have gripped these principles over rising food, you know, prices, and they say that it would be important that this is addressed so that then they are able to function or to manage the schools as well. On this conversation on KEMSA, as I have said, the conversation is on, and it's about throwing the ball to the other party as we seek to see just how best the same would be addressed. Those are the key stories on the Daily Nation, as well as the Standard newspaper. Now on the People Daily, more or less the same. Rocks police force over top jobs. That's there. I think we have already touched on that. And as I had mentioned earlier on, we saw a majority of Kenyans hitting the streets, or some Kenyans hitting the streets, in the name of saying that it would be important that the government relooks into the clauses that sit in the Finance Bill 2023. 11 held over demo to protest against Ruto's tax plan. At some point, the conversation was that perhaps this was not notified to the police, but the human rights activists and protesters said that this was well notified, and it would be important that the government looks into it. And that as well is one of the biggest stories. Alongside this one, Raila Azimio leaders reject prayer breakfast invitation. this, well, you would want to term as unfortunate, but yes, that is where we are. They say there's some element of hypocrisy in how we're handling things as a nation, and therefore perhaps we might need to look into our morals before we even think of, inviting, the conversation of prayer at this very point. Also, as they remain adamant that in the event that the finance bill sails as it is, then they'll have no choice but to mobilize the people to the streets, and equally they take a direction of hitting the courts for that. I have no idea why I was sent packing. XPS says that is in relation to the KEMSA conversation. The big stories on the People Daily. We now look at the stories of the day. The Shakahola grave discovery continues, with Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki announcing the combing of more than 37,000 acres in Chakama Ranch, believed to be part of the scene of crime. And as Chacha Jackson reports, the government has announced the site of the grave crimes will be converted into a national memorial site.
The Shakahola horror continues with the grave discovery of mass grievous criminal activities, which Interior CS Kithure Kindiki say may have extended beyond the 800-acre land belonging to controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie. Speaking during the launch of the third phase of exhumption, Kindiki said the government is concentrating on more than 37,000 acres in Chakama Ranch.
Overseen the commencement of the third phase of exhumations, because we still have graves that are unopened in this forest, and our teams are doing a great job. I would like to emphasize that we are very satisfied as government with the teams that are carrying out that exercise, because we need to be careful to do it within the law and also to meet international standards.
The scene of crime will be converted into a national memorial site. Kindiki further stated that the said investigative teams have assured the government that they have watertight case against Paul Mackenzie and his collaborators, who are in custody, with the evidence being sufficient enough to prove charges of genocide and crime against humanity.
The scene of crime will be taken over as a national memorial, and therein government, in consultations with the members of the public, including the local community, will convert this scene of crime to a place of remembrance, so that many generations to come, many centuries into the future, Kenya and the world will never forget.
Out of 95 followers of Mackenzie rescued so far, 19 have been successfully rescued and reunited with their families.
And we suspect that the number of victims who could be alive could be diminishing. And I want to commend the search and rescue team for doing a great job. And up to now, we've been able to save 95 lives, which would have been lost if it was not for the teams that have been combing this forest.
Jackson Chacha, TV47.
Tension is building up along the West Pokot and Turkana border points after two young men aged 20 and 25 years were shot and seriously injured after suspected bandits from Turkana County attacked Sarmach village in the wee hours of Tuesday morning. The two, together with 4 others, are recuperating from gunshot wounds at the Kapenguria County Referral Hospital. Eric Matika reports.
A day after one person was gunned down and others injured by suspected bandits from Elgeyo Marakwet County in the daytime attack on Monday at Tilakai Village, Pokot Central in West Pokot County, 2 young men have been shot and seriously injured after suspected bandits from Turkana County attacked Sarmach village today morning. According to West Pokot County Commissioner Apollo Kelo, who spoke to us via a phone call, bandits from Turkana South Sub-County, numbering 10, attacked the village, shot the 2 and drove away with 41 heads of cattle, which were later recovered. Mr. Apollo said the 20-year-old Lokwapale Lokopoi and 25-year-old Longura Losia were shot in the chest and thighs. West Pokot woman representative Rael Kasiwai, who visited the victims at the hospital on Tuesday, condemned the incidents. The woman representative castigated security organs working in the region over alleged laxity and failing to protect residents.
Kwa hivyo kama mama Pokot ama mkaaji wa Pokot na kiongozi ya Pokot, mimi nalaani kitendo hicho. I want to condemn all these killings in the strongest terms possible because this is not bringing unity amongst us, and even when all this is happening, our security personnel are not doing anything in our boundaries. So it's like there is a collusion. Kuna ni kama wale upande wa viongozi wetu ama wale security personnel wa Turkana wanaangalia haya mambo, hawataki kuchukua hatua yoyote.
Residents have now called on the government to beef up security in the area. Eric Matika, TV47, Nairobi.
And fear has gripped the village of Ogorale in the Tabaj constituency of Wajir County a few days after reservist soldiers were killed and others injured by suspected Alshabab militants. Now emotional leaders and elders visited the area to mourn with the residents and further urging the national government to increase the number of security officers patrolling the area.
On Friday, 2nd of this month, this community was attacked by a group of Alshabab, and they did two things. One, they destroyed the Safaricom mast here, obviously to make sure that people do not communicate effectively with the security sector and other people that they commune with. And two, of course, that this will facilitate their easy movement in Wajir County. They have come after a long time, and this is primarily because they have access to water and food during this rainy season. Unfortunately, they killed, during this process of destroying the mast, they killed one of our young people. And that's why we came here to pay our condolences and say pole to the family, and to indicate that we will continue to support them.
Now, Haki Africa is now calling upon reforms in the prisons and correctional facilities after the alleged murder of prisoner in Eldoret main prison, Uasin Gishu County. Oliver Ochieng was due for release on the 12th of this month before he met his untimely death. The family is calling for investigations into the matter, with post-mortem examinations citing he had defense bruises and signs of lack of oxygen and blood.
The alleged murder of Oliver Ochieng inside the Eldoret main prison has upset his family. His wife, Monica Njeri, says the deceased had complained of harassment inside the prison walls.
But amekuwa ki-complain, ananiambia, anapigwa, anawekwa kwa cell. Kuna siku nilimtafuta sana nikamkosa. Akakuja kaniambia aliwekwa kwa cell for 10 days. Alafu wanamwagia maji akiwa kwa cell. Hakuna mattress, hakuna nini, ni kanyumba tu kadogo.
His father says that the prison administration had claimed that Oliver was harming himself, which eventually led to his death. However, post-mortem results show defense bruises and lack of oxygen and blood.
Ile kitu tumeona ni defense marks kwa hapa, kama alikuwa na defend himself. Iko na scratches kila mahali, na tumemwambiwa pia ni alikosa oxygen na damu. So we don't know mali walikuwa natoa maneno ya kujigonga ilitoka.
Haki Africa human rights activist Kimutai Girui has condemned the murder, saying Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki should look into the issue of prison reforms.
What we want to say as Haki Africa, as human rights activists in Eldoret and families who have their kin in prisons, is that the CS Kindiki must do better to improve the prisons. These are not dungeons. They're not supposed to be torture cells. These are supposed to be correctional institutions where Kenyans are taken to be reformed, to become good citizens in our country.
Oliver was arrested for robbery with violence and remanded, and was due for release on the 12th of June, a year later, following a lack of witnesses by the court. Vera Alberta, TV47, Nairobi.
The former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health, Josephine Amburu, has distanced herself from the 3.7 billion shillings net scandal, and appearing before the Senate Committee on Health, Amburu defended herself, saying that the purchase and distribution of the nets was not under the department. And Ren Kilemi details.
Is there a relationship between the letter from the PS and the termination of the tender?
Ousted top officials at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority KEMSA, including former Principal Secretary Josephine Amburu and suspended CEO Terry Ramadhani, Tuesday appeared before the Senate Committee on Health to answer questions on the purchase and distribution of mosquito nets worth 3.7 billion shillings.
Since these people came to your office,
the former PS distanced herself from the botched 3.7 billion scandal, saying the purchase and distribution of the nets was not under her department, further pointing an accusing finger to PS Peter Tum, who has since been moved to the Ministry of Arts, Sports and Youth Affairs.
So you were wrongly fired? KEMSA was not under you then?
No, KEMSA is not under me.
So it was under another PS2?
It was under PS2. Yes.
So you don't have any involvement in what happens in KEMSA because it
whatever happens in KEMSA, I have no control.
So you are not in any way either through conduct or express instructions involved with the running and management of KEMSA, specifically on this issue of Global Fund?
No.
Amburu further expressed her shock at President Ruto's decision to send her home. She told the committee that she learned of her sacking through the media.
Majority of you watch the TV, you say people gave advice, they say let her go. There are a lot of things which happened on the media and all of us listened, which was a shocker to me. So what do I do as Josephine?
While making her submissions, suspended KEMSA CEO Terry Ramadhani told the committee that the botched tender was above board. Ramadhani wondered whether her suspension was linked to tender processes, saying that since her suspension, there has been no form of communication on the charges.
We clarified that with Global Fund, and Global Fund confirmed that indeed the insecticide that was approved was pyrethroid and not PBO, and therefore continue with the process as previously approved.
Ramadhani was suspended together with other Ministry of Health officials following complaints of corruption and mismanagement at KEMSA. And Ren Kilemi, TV 47.
And it's the Principal Secretary, that is former Principal Secretary and not permanent. And again, to a story on the world of ministries, and Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Housing, Charles Hinga, appeared before the Finance and National Planning Committee, where he clarified an array of issues contained in the Finance Bill 2023. The PS urged members of the committee to amend sections of the bill instead of shooting it down in totality, following its immense benefits than the shortfalls. Micah Gungu with that.
both employee and employer contributions.
For the second time, Principal Secretary for Housing Charles Hinga appeared before the Parliamentary Committee on Finance after seeking another opportunity to be heard. The PS finally yielding, saying that the Finance Bill of 2023 may have some weak provisions which have divided Kenyans.
It has issues, and part of the bill, the part of the process that we are going through, it is within this committee to make those amendments so that it is reflective.
He, however, urged the Molo MP Kimani Kuria-led committee to amend such proposals instead of rejecting the bill in totality.
They need a plan Now, the plan that we have put in here certainly is not perfect. And we are hoping that in the process of perfecting it, don't throw it away. Okay? Let us fix what needs to be fixed. You can push us to next year and tell us, some things will only allow you to do next year because we think you need time. But please, don't postpone this dream because those 5 million young people don't have jobs. Cannot wait.
Among the contentious issues in the bill, which is expected to be tabled in the National Assembly on Thursday for its second reading, is the proposed 3% housing levy. He drummed up support for the proposed 3% housing levy, insisting that through it, Kenyans who are not so keen on getting an affordable house will be able to receive back their contributions after 7 years after the taxman has taken his share.
If you get into financial challenges, I think that was the other section, the other part of the question, and you are unable to continue with this house, there is 2 portions, okay? All right, because this is a rent-to-own program. There is an equity portion which you will be allowed to get back.
The MPs wanted to know why views from Kenyans were not sought before the housing levy was included in the bill. In defense, the PS said that the proposal was there since the time of the previous administration.
The basic need for a pastoralist is water. We are suffering. And then you make us mandatory to build houses.
Where this money is it going to this National Housing Corporation? Because that is what, if the reference that you make to the Housing Act establishes the National Housing Corporation.
These are the things that you need to harmonize so that there is fairness between all people of Kenya, smooth and take up. It's a fair question. This is not a fair, it is fair. It is very fair, isn't it?
We have come to a point of reckoning. I am lucky to be one of the ones that survived from the Jubilee government. Housing was one of the big 4 agenda, and it was one of the big 4 agenda because, Chair, it was linked to the economic recovery. Kenya Kwanza has the same thing. Let us not lose the essence of why we are doing this, because the millions of young people that are looking for jobs out there.
He said the Jubilee administration was to blame for failing to create proper awareness on the housing levy. President William Ruto's government initially recommended passing the contentious bill without any amendment. But with concerns from Kenyans, it is clear that the committee will amend several clauses, including the proposed 3% housing levy.
Investments.
Mike Kagwongo, TV47, Nairobi.
And 11 people have been arrested in protests dubbed Sita Sita that were organized to protest against the increase in the cost of living, as well as the 2023 finance bill that proposes to increase taxes on various goods in the country. The protesters were heading to the parliament buildings when they were stopped by the police using tear gas canisters. Nelly Lusigi with more.
Tuesday morning, protesters engaged police in running battles as they marched towards the parliament buildings in protest against the high cost of living. The protesters registered their worries on the proposed 2023 finance bill that is expected to be tabled in parliament for the second reading this Thursday, most carrying banners decrying the increase in taxes proposed in the bill, saying it will drive them deeper into poverty. However, their mission was stopped as the police hurled tear gas canisters at them in a bid to disperse them. 11 people amongst the protesters were arrested. The protest had been dubbed Sita Sita as they have been held on the 6th day of the month. Nelly Lusigi, TV47, Nairobi.
Elizabeth Mutuko and Mike Kagwongo following up the process of prayer, and they'll be giving us updates down on ground on what leadership will be joining in, even as the Azimio team said that they will not attend the prayer session So we'll be following up keenly on this just to give you updates on the same. And perhaps the main discussion of the day will be that this morning also as we unpack some of the other stories that are making headlines right in the country and beyond. So before we get to that point, I'll ask you to take a quick short break and then we come back with Elizabeth and the guests on set. Back and will be updated on when we cross over to Elizabeth Mutuku and Mike Agwongo. But for now, allow us to loop in Nordine Kagai, Wakili and Advocate of the High Court. Thank you so much, Nordine, for always creating time to be with us on Morning Cafe. It's always good to have you. How have you been?
Thank you for having me here. I wasn't feeling too well, but I said Linda called, so I just have to come.
You know, thank you so much. I think there's a bug that is moving around. Everyone has their own specific variants. And we can only keep a distance, a social distance. But you know, above Linda calling, I think we owe it to the nation, we owe it to the country to discuss some of these matters. And so I think it's a noble thing, and I appreciate that you are always there to, you know, discuss some of these matters that relate to us as a people, because it's out of these conversations that then we get some of these, you know, answers that we seek. Justina Wamai, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been.
You've been well?
I've been well.
You look good though. So hata ukisema economy iko mbaya kidogo, perhaps better than what you were like the other time you were here. What is this good thing that you're eating? Kama uliingia kwa serikali.
Bado
wanasema kwa serikali ndio pesa iko. I don't know.
Hii serikali watuambie bali papeleka pesa. There is no money.
You know?
Even people who are selling groceries, someone is telling you people are avoiding to buy tomatoes. So they're just buying the onions and the skuma, that's it.
Okay.
Kuna shida.
I don't know whether it's me, but skuma kwa supermarket imekuwa cheaper than skuma nje kwa soko. Kama ni mimi tu. I don't know. For some reasons, you know, there's a time I could not go to that point kwa supermarket. I could not even look kwa your side because, well, you can easily get mboga outside kwa mama mboga affordably. Lakini sasa kwa mama mboga kumekuwa kubaya zaidi.
Inabidi sasa tumbebe. Unajua pia yako na mzigo.
Na mzigo. So you just have to go there and support in the name of support, but in real sense unaumia. We all know Justina, of course, was running mate on one of the presidential candidates. That is in 2022. And to crown it all, let's just say she's a politician and equally a lady who's determined to speak to the matters of the people of this country. You know, I was watching you your time here, presidential debate. I'm sure you watched her.
Yeah, I did.
You impressed very many of us. You almost got us thinking, hiya, kumbe we have some ladies who can be.
You know what I realized in politics, Linda? When you go there, you meet the old guys, and they think the youth don't know anything.
Yeah.
So that was the burden I had to prove that, you know what, we know everything.
Did it not offend you? And I know we're not supposed to go back to that, but Kidogo too, did it not offend you that, you know, even those ones that were celebrating you in the name of, umetu surprise. Like, you know, in the first place, they perhaps thought, hata hakuna kitu kubwa ataleta kwa meza, hata ongea. But now when she was there, everyone was like, oh, okay, come to think of it, she is that good.
I think I proved myself. That was the beauty of it all. Because I remember guys were saying, after now our debate, Justina, come back for this other one.
No?
So I think I made a statement that youth only need opportunity. We are good, we know what we want, we know what we are doing. Just the opportunity that is missing.
Right.
So it was a good experience. Yes.
Hautamuuliza kama bado anakubaliana na hiyo mambo ya bangi ama ilikuwa nini ile alikuwa anauza?
You know, but the funny thing is, for me, I would have preferred if they were all debating together.
Yes.
I didn't like the stagnated debates, because at the end of the day, it's good to put them on the level play, you know. Because they were saying they were using statistics. Now statistics are relevant at the end of the day. I can have my own. I say I'm 90%, I'm winning. I might say imeenda, and then you see how things happen. So at the end of the day, I believe every government that comes into office, there are things, for example, your opponents were saying, that sometimes it might make sense. It doesn't have to do some research. Like whatever they're saying, yes, it's been implemented in other countries. So just look at it, and if it works out, if it doesn't, you move on. The sad reality is that my manifesto is the king, yours is more or less rubbish, and I can never implement your stuff because I don't want to give you credit. So that is the sad reality, because we take politics in a very radical way, which we believe that I have a plan, I'm on a plan, that's what we were told. I'm looking for that plan, it's still working, because I read that manifesto, and we're, I think, 9 months into, close to a year. So we're going to take some things, which I don't know what we'll take, because at the end of the day, the manifestos we're given, most of them are books. And you know, Kenyans don't read. That's the sad reality. Most don't read. So when you give them that manifesto, and when you look at campaign promises, I'll tell you for a fact, things that are said during the rally are never in the manifesto. So when they promise heaven and then they get into office and they realize, oh, by the way, we're not going to achieve this. So they spin. And that's what we are seeing. So I'm waiting to see how 5 years of spinning will end up, because those who are downtrodden and they believe that this was their Robin Hood kind of moment, if things are as they are, then they are seriously disappointed.
And Justina, I'll ask that question again, but
Yes.
perhaps, reframe it by saying that, do you suppose it could have been a different affair in the country now that you started by saying, pesa hakuna imepotea? Would it have been different with your government, if at all there was a sailing through of the same, in as much as we now understand that the political fallouts are in existence, which is normal?
It would, because we had the how question of how to make money. Remember at the time we were speaking about legalizing marijuana, but actually I've taken a petition to the National Assembly to decriminalize industrial hemp. So as a raw material for industries. I don't want to focus on the marijuana aspect because marijuana is bangi, but industrial hemp is katani in Kiswahili. So the purpose of it is that if we have more industries, government will tax more income tax, more corporate tax. We'll have our own superior, quality products that are Kenyan made. So probably it would have been different. We would have been collecting more in terms of taxes. And you see, it's like 8 months now. So it would be in the second season of harvesting the industrial hemp. The problem this government is facing is that they do not want to widen their tax base. So they're overtaxing the already structured. Yes.
All right. Well, here we are, and the conversation on tax is one that we really cannot run away from.
True.
We all thought that perhaps the person to tell people to go to the streets would be the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. But yesterday, Kenyans, activists, got to the streets to say, you know what, please consider this on this very last moment, we are dying horses, we are kicking, and we are hoping that the government would listen to us. Dean, do you suppose there's going to be any element of the government listening to it? I know yesterday they sort of, portrayed a picture of perhaps, getting to a point where they want to soften their stance in relation to the document itself and what is incorporated therein. But do you suppose it will be to the satisfaction of the common Kenyan?
Well, you see, I remember last year and the years before that we were with you, and I had my reservations on BBI, for example.
Yeah.
And the way it was being carried out, you remember, there was too much bravado. And I thought that the fact that the current president was a deputy president by then, he would have learned a thing or two about how you push certain motions in the country. And the sad reality is that the finance bill has a lot of issues. Many Kenyans have a lot of issues. I had a member of parliament, I think it's Osoro, who was saying that he was not elected to listen. He was elected to lead. So it's his duty to take those who elected him to where he thinks fits them. It doesn't work that way because you are using delegated power. I have a say, and that's why there's the clause on recall. I can decide you go home at the end of the day. So the sad reality is that yesterday I was disturbed because when people are having a peaceful picket, a peaceful demonstration, they are raising their issues. They want to take a petition somewhere. Now, the Constitution, those who drafted it were not mad because they realized back in the day, this is how they used to be handled. So why would you arrest people who are peaceful, number one? If they gave a notification, because there is this mentality from the police officers that it's supposed to be permission. It's not permission. Realize, the Constitution gives me those rights unless we have suspended the Constitution in this country. That is why we'll see these arbitrary arrests. And I wonder where most of those young men are, because the organizations that were with them are saying some of them can't be traced. So where are they at the end of the day? Let people air their grievances. If you have an issue with that, it clearly shows they're doing something wrong. It reminds me of a certain reggae song that says, where there's injustice in the world, protests are the order of the day. Now you can count how many protests we've had since this government took office. That tells you something is amiss. Now those who are closer to the president are either too afraid to tell him the truth, are either blind to the fact that there are issues that need to be solved, because Kenyans are crying for one reason or another. You tell them that you'd want them to have a house. A house is a noble, it's noble, because at the end of the day, it's one of the basic needs you see, shelter. But at the end of the day, they're asking you, that is fine, that's long term. But what about your short term goals? Right now, I can't eat. And you tell them that I'm going to give you kazi, hiyo ya kwenda kufanya hiyo kazi ya kujenga hizo nyumba, watajenga aje if they're not eating? You get? So listen to what the masses are saying. They are saying, we want to be cushioned right now. There are issues that we want addressed. Now, when you give them 16% on fuel, for example, you're killing them. That means everything goes up. When they ask questions on housing and you see a distressed, perturbed PS who's in anguish to explain what he himself is advocating for, it tells you there's something. So there's a missing link between those in office and the citizens. Now, it gets to a time where you'll keep arresting them, but for how long? Because that's what leads to an unrest, So I think at the end of the day, let us listen to what the Kenyans are saying. As a leader, like I believe those who are members of parliament, they should have done public participations in their respective constituencies. So that when you come to actually vote, I heard how they're supposed to vote in the open. So that reminds me of VBI, where they were given a microphone down there, and the master would tick, oh, Kawapi, yes. So I believe that is going to happen, because I've heard what the president said over the weekend. So I'd also want it to be in open, so that we realize who are these members of parliament that can't actually listen. Because you listen to most of them, they tell you the government cannot lose. Lose against who? Who is the government fighting? Are you fighting your citizens? So a government at war with the citizens will never win.
Okay.
In any country. So you can never lose. And you see, they'll try and box it in a way that they're fighting Azimio MPs. But the sad reality is that, from the knowledge I have, there are members of parliament in their own camp who are against that bill. So I believe, I told you, I'll know whether this parliament, I'll have hope in it. My hope is going to be done, will be decided during that day. Because if you're captured enough and you're afraid that you cannot actually articulate issues pertaining to Kenyan issues, then there's no point of having that parliament.
Okay. Peter Moshindu, good morning.
Good morning to you.
You well?
I'm doing well.
This morning of prayer?
You know, since we changed the place where the TV is, I have to deal with quite a number of
challenges on the road. I thought this is closer to your place.
No, it's very far.
Than Parklands?
Oh yes, it's very far. At Parklands. No, at Parklands, I leave my house 25 minutes before the show, and I'm there. Right now, I have got to do an hour plus. Whether I use the road to town, most of the time when I am caught up in the happy hour, Kiambu Road happy hour, when they cross the traffic in coming to Kiambu, for those coming to Nairobi to come, they will close it for like 35 minutes. If I decide to use the new Western bypass, I'm gonna deal with Snarlap at place called Dendero, at Ruaka, at the Gigithogoro Runda entry. So it's quite a challenge, but I'm here.
Well, I don't know, quite interesting, but all the same, like you say, the importance is that you are here. I hope that then the government works to make things much easier. You know, most of the times we will look back to look at the government to say, ongeza barabara hata mahali, and all that sort of things that are easy. But we're glad to have you this morning.
Yes.
Peter Moshindu is a governance and policy expert. Thank you so much for creating time to be with us. And we want to discuss, you know, the essence of prayers, but before then, we also have to look at some of the things that are playing out. And, you know, we're just having a chit-chat in relation to the events of the day right here in the country, and perhaps to relate it, you know, to the national scene, which equally is very, very important, because we do not stay or operate in isolation. So here we are. I'm sure you have listened to what Nordin has to say. You listened to what Justina Omai has to say. And most of the Kenyans, and equally the leadership itself. What do you make of the state of the nation today? And what are the chances that tomorrow will be better?
The most unfortunate thing in this country is that somebody decided to throw honesty out of the window. And for instance, the current discussion is on the finance bill. There are people who have made it their mission to base their argument on non-factual information about the finance bill. There are those people who are also approaching, as they support the finance bill, they are also approaching it from an angle that does not really convince Kenyans that they should support the finance bill. And therefore, we find ourselves in a quagmire where there is no honesty in the national discussions that we have. That we have decided to play politics about things that are very serious and concern Kenyans in a big way. And therefore, I think one of the things, and I do agree with the majority leader, as he ably said it in Parliament yesterday, that we need to pray that one of the things we must have back is honesty. Because if we are going to have national conversations that are going to yield results for both the readers and those they read, it has to be based on an honesty. I mean, it is absurd when a member of parliament stands up in a crowd and decides to publicly lie to the crowd of things that are in the finance bill and they are not. It is also sad for a member of parliament to stand and support the finance bill based on things that are not factual in that finance bill. So in either side, we are lacking something called honesty. And that is one of the reasons why today you see quite a bit of turmoil in terms of, you see protests here and there. It is because Kenyans have been fed on things that are not factual from either side.
Why should we allow for that to happen, yet the document is out there in the public?
Unfortunately, as I told you here some few months back, that we also have a civil society that has now become political. They are now affiliated to either side, and that's the truth. I have a friend of mine, he's called Wamagata, he's from Kikuyu constituency. He's one of those people who organized yesterday's protest. Yesterday's protest, because I do not want to really go into details, if you would only know the people who are behind that protest, they are people affiliated to a certain political function.
Is it?
Tomorrow, if you are going to have another people supporting the finance bill, they will probably be financed from a certain political function. And that's the sad reality, because if politicians are taking us for a ride, the people who have been the voice of reason in the past are the civil societies. The joyers of yesterday, I can't remember the Archbishop, ACK Archbishop, I can't remember his name. And there were quite a number of civil societies that were the voice of reason when politicians could not provide that voice of reason. Unfortunately, and I keep telling you today, the civil society also became political.
Wow.
And that's the unfortunate truth. I want to be shown one civil society in this country that is not being financed. If it is not being financed directly by politicians, it is being financed by organizations that are linked to some politicians in this country.
Well,
and that's the most unfortunate truth.
Peter, we could not dispute that element of truth, but equally we also have to acknowledge that, well, perhaps there's reason as to why then they hit the streets, because in as much as you're being financed and really there's no reason why you should hit the street, then it becomes difficult even with the money. So allow us to take a quick short break, and then we come back, cross over to Safari Park as well, come back here and expound more on this very conversation. The national prayer taking place at the Safari Park Hotel this morning. Elizabeth Mutuku on standby to update us on what is going on as it stands and what to expect. Elizabeth Mutuku, if you can hear me, good morning.
A very good morning, Linda Lela, right from Safari Park, where national prayer breakfast is being held. And you've asked what is happening, and leaders are streaming in. This being the 20th prayer breakfast and the first prayer breakfast which President William Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua are going to lead, and especially over 2,500 leaders, top leaders, officials, dignitaries are expected in this place. And this prayer breakfast comes amid political discourse with Azimio One Kenya already having declared they won't be in this prayer breakfast in what they term as pretentious, because President William Ruto and Kenya Kwanza government, they've not met the demands of Kenyans, and they are giving false hope. But leaders, not leaders, but MPs from Kenya Kwanza and Azimio are all in this prayer breakfast. But before I proceed, remember, I'm not alone. I am with Mike Kagongo. But before I bring him on, I am going to speak to one of the leaders who is here from Kenya Kwanza Divide, and is going to tell us what they are expecting today. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa, for finding time to talk to us. I know this prayer breakfast comes amid challenges and also discourse in matters taxation and also the finance bill. But before that, what are your expectations today?
Thank you very much. Today being my first time to attend this such functions or prayer breakfast, I don't think I expect much, because the only thing I know is that we are here to pray for the country. We are here to pray for ourselves, to make sure that at least our regime moves on very well in the right direction. There is a lot of, anyway, so many much teething problems which I think we are going to overcome, and we are seeing we are moving on the right direction.
We know the Azimio One Kenya has already declared that this is not what they want to do, especially the leaders and core principals in Kenya Kwanza, in Azimio One Kenya. What do you think of this, and is it really reconciliation back to God and man as the theme is today?
As expected, Azimio has been is on the other side of the divide, and you know, I don't know why they are coming on that line, because I think personally I know they've been always attending this prayer breakfast and they have never had any issues. And I think because our president has been very tough on the issues of maybe trying to keep our lanes. The opposition has to keep on their side so that they can give us on checks and balances of the excesses of the government. So that is why I think they must be feeling why I think they have not come the way they've been doing always. You know, they have always been fighting to be in any government when they lose. And this time around, I think President Ruto has been very tough and said he cannot accept these issues of handshake, the hands of Nusumkate. This is and I think that is why they feel the pain of maybe saying there's a lot of challenges.
Are we really expecting politics here?
Politics, I don't think it's not going to be the norm of the day, but we are here to pray. I don't think there's any much politics of any kind today.
Right. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be talking to you later after this, and maybe after we've heard what they're going to present. And Linda Lela, that is one of the leaders, and it's not the only leader we have. I am bringing in Mike Kagongo and one Kawanjiko to hear what they have today. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. I know this is also your first prayer breakfast as a member of parliament. Is it really the first?
It's the second. I think it is the second.
What do we expect today?
Today, I think it's all about the nationalism. It has everything to do with us as Kenyans and the issues that probably are affecting the whole nations, because we had that discussion yesterday about the national dialogues and the issues that probably we need to discuss. It doesn't matter from which divide you come from politically, but you know, you air out your issues, and even the issues of reconciliation. When the prayers is involved and we are evoking the name of God, there is that reconciliatory tone that comes with the national prayer breakfast. So today it was expected that all of us, the leader of opposition, the leader of national government, will always be under the one roof and also try to discuss the national issues and also pray to God on the issues that are affecting our country. and the way forward in terms of the politics, in terms of the economy, in terms of our nation, we'll be able to deliberate and discuss some of those issues. So that was what is expected today. But
Prayer theme today is reconciliation to God and man. However, Azimio One Kenya principles, they say that if I may quote, it's a dishonor to our God and country, considering the display of arrogance and superiority from Kenya Kwanza government. Is that what really is happening?
I don't think there is any issue to do with arrogance, because at the end of the day, there is what we call politics. There is also what we call this particular day. You know, we put our differences aside and we come and reconcile. We tell each other the truth. We talk about the nation as whole. Because even if the leader of opposition has his own light, as a leader of opposition, he has those issues that he would want to address. But now we leave all those issues aside and we come under one roof, as one Kenya, as one people, and we reconcile ourselves to God. This that we have been saying, we apologize. Well, if you remember, I think it's 2019 or 2020 when we had the prayer breakfast, that even the Prime Minister said sorry to the then President, the former Deputy President said sorry to the then former Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka. So it is all about reconciliation. And probably now people can now be able to champion new path after, whatever will happen today under one roof. So it has nothing with arrogance. When we leave politics, we put politics aside. Today we come and reconcile as a people. Whatever comes out of this prayer breakfast is what now will give us the strength and determinations to keep pushing those agendas and things from here going henceforth. So it has nothing to do with arrogance. It has nothing to do with kifua mingi. It has everything to do with prayer. If they came today, probably whatever the president will have said, he would have said something different. But now, if they missed, so maybe they will have another issue to think about. And wataendelea kusema ni kifua na kizungu mingi.
Thank you so much. We'll be talking to you after this. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Those are leaders from Kenya Kwanza Divide, but we've also seen especially members of parliament from Azimio One Kenya who chose to be here, but opposition, Azimio One Kenya principles, they declared that the prayer breakfast as dishonor to the country and pretentious. But now I bring in Mike Kagwongo. Kagwongo, what do we expect today? Are they likely to be politics in this place?
Yeah, of course, we are expecting a very heated politics debate about the bipartisan process, issues also regarding the finance bill. You remember yesterday, Housing PS appeared before the departmental committee. So it's something. There have been some allegations that the government might drop a little bit the 3% housing levy to about 2%.
After we listened to Inga yesterday.
Exactly. And after also listening to Kenyans, there have been some allegations that the government may decide to reduce it or increase the tax from 16% to 18%. That was a proposal that MPs also gave it to the PS. So we are expecting a very heated debate today about also the religious leaders coming in between the two coalitions, the government and the opposition, just to make sure that Kenyans are on the good side.
This was to happen 31st May, but it was pushed to today.
Sure.
What really do you think made the leaders to make, or rather the speakers of both houses to make this decision?
According to National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula said this was an avoidable circumstance, but of course it's all about the planning. Maybe they didn't have enough time to plan the issue and just to make sure that they had a good moment with planners. You remember the planners of this event met President William Ruto on Monday to familiarize or to finalize everything that will be happening over today. So it was an avoidable circumstance according to the National Assembly
Speaker Moses Wetangula.
I
understand away from that, Azimio Brigade and especially the principals decided today it's not they're not going to attend this prayer breakfast in what they term government as pretentious and also giving false hope to Kenyans. Are we likely to see something different out of this? And after this, maybe, are they going to speak about it?
Initially, I was able to speak off camera to Kawanjiko and Honorable Kawanjiko, and he was telling me here that they are not being honest, of course. That's not being honest because this is national prayer. It doesn't have to bring some bridges in between the two coalitions, regardless of the opposition, but just bringing Kenyans together, as you said earlier on about the theme of these years, is reconciliation between God
and man. However, we're waiting to see whether either of these leaders, especially the president and deputy president, if their tone is going to change on various matters.
But previously, Liz, we've seen the president and the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, meeting in some occasions. The former at the funeral of Mukami Kimathi, they also met in Kasarani for was it Kasarani or Nyayo for sports. So regardless of all this meeting, we had
reconciliation is happening.
Yes, and we had Kenya Kwanza leaders talking about it candidly and saying Kenya Kwanza or Azimio leader is trying to seek for a handshake from President William Ruto.
Something which
and according to yesterday's letter, if you read that letter well, they were, Azimio said very well that they don't want to be misquoted. The meetings between Raila Odinga and President William Ruto, they don't want to be misquoted any longer. That when they meet, they want to have a handshake or not. So they're trying to sideline themselves or put themselves far from the government a little bit, so that Kenya Kwanza MPs will not find anything to squash the government.
I will let you take it back to Linda Alela, as even we hear and go listen to the music, because it's getting louder by minute, setting the mood for prayers.
Thank you so much, Linda Alela. Indeed, we are bringing you live coverage of everything that will be happening this place, and just to make sure that our viewers, our audience, get a glimpse of everything that will be happening here. Remember, this is the 20th edition of National Prayer Breakfast, and we are expecting, if at least one or two Azimio MPs, remember, according to yesterday's letter, they were allowed to, at their own wish, if they will wish to come over, they will be attending this National Prayer Breakfast. So we'll be bringing you anything that will be happening here, and we've come here, Liz Mutuku and I, and also Flora Lemuke has also joined us, just to make sure that our audience gets a glimpse of what will be happening here. Back to studio. My name is Mike Kagwango.
So much, Elizabeth Mutuku, as well as Mike Agongo, all friendly, the weather right there and looking lovely as we all look forward to this moment with God. And I think I come back to the panelists on set, a moment with God, perhaps a special moment, because, well, we always have moments with God every day. This goes to you, Josephine.
I'm trying to think, I think at this point, the morale of the citizens is down. If there's a country that is prayerful, it's Kenya. Every Sunday we see the president, the deputy, even the leader of opposition, somewhere in charge, you know? So I think you need to move beyond prayers. We need to get into actions. And even the Bible tells us that prayers without action is dead. So if the action is that Kenyans are questioning where is NHIF money, the police are saying they're no longer going to arrest people because they cannot give them food. They can't give prisoners food. The Wazés are complaining there's no money. So I'm seeing the prayers and the loss of money. Those are two mismatched things. And this government, and I believe also, the budget that have been used to set up this prayer day is a lot of money. So when government says that they're taxing Kenyans because they don't have money, they are not being truthful, as they claim to be truthful men. You look at the logistics. Look at the point every time the president is going anywhere, the CSS who follow him, the MPs who follow him. In terms of logistics, that's a lot of money.
But this is in circulation within the country somehow. So,
pardon?
This would be money that is in circulation within the country, you know?
But it's not. Actually, I think it's been locked up somewhere. The money is not coming on the ground. That is the reality.
No, I'm saying, like, for instance, what has been used to, you know, service or to cater for this prayer moment. And this is a culture that we've had for the longest time. Why would you want us to go away from the cultures that we have? And perhaps this is just within the country, and so it's money that is in circulation within the country.
But Linda, there are things even yourself you used to do in your house, but with the economy, you've cut down on them.
Right.
This is seen as a luxury, to be very honest.
Prayer.
Yeah, prayer is luxury. Look at the logistics, look at the tents, look at everything.
Yeah.
They're meticulous in planning and consumption. The Kenyans, money, taxpayers' money, they're consuming it. So when they come here to tell us that we don't have money, their senators, MPs are trying to justify housing levy, saying we've been given 30 million each mortgage. That is money that would have been put into the housing levy fund, if they were really genuine about helping the Kenyans. So from the look of everything, because even those people who have maybe hired out their tents, they are their friends, we are not feeling the money on the ground, I tend to believe that this government is focusing on vendor-driven projects.
Okay.
That they're going to benefit alone, but the ordinary Kenyan is suffering.
Well, and I heard someone say that maybe in as much as we are having a national conversation in the sense that, even public holidays should be held, in different parts of the country, perhaps that money that took us all the way to Embu would have been used in Nairobi, cut down the budgets, cut down on everything and all that. Nadine, you are a person who prays 5 times a day, understands the importance of prayer, the essence of prayer, whether things are good or bad, prayer is a must. Is it really a luxury at this point?
You see, the sad reality is that our political leaders are hypocrites. Today they will gather there, they will act like they are praying, and step out and pickpocket us at the end of the day. You see, prayer is not bad. Prayer is good. It brings people together, we pray, and I believe the sad reality, getting from what she's saying, there's a lot of largesse in this government. You get, there's a lot of unwarranted expenditure. Now, today's prayer, actually we need to ask ourselves what we have gained from this prayer breakfast that we keep having since it started.
Okay.
Because some of the times it is used for political leaders to score points at each other. That's why I'm telling you, Azimio won't go. And some would use it to try and paint a holier than thou image and paint the others as etc. Now the sad reality is that when you do that, you end up making those who, for example, prescribe to a certain faith, they keep asking the same questions, because you see, we've seen rogue pastors, and some actually making people ask different questions as to the faith they profess. So I believe prayer is a very delicate issue. And the fact that we actually mismanage it courtesy of politics in seeking votes, in trying to endear ourselves to people via faith, because it is extremely hard for people to question you when you come with a blanket that screams, I am holy. So nobody's going to question you. If this thing actually makes sense, I really hope and pray that it will be less political, which is close to impossible knowing them. There will be issues of the finance bill. There will be issue of Wale. I heard yesterday the leader of majority saying that he prays for Kalonzo and he prays for Raila, and if they don't come, he'll pray for them. Sarcastic at the end of the day, is not being genuine. So at the end of the day, I believe they are the reason as to why people are questioning certain things, because there's a lot of hypocrisy. That's what I've said. You pray, you submit before God, then once you leave there, you go back to doing all the evils you are doing. It's like a reset button. You switch off, you go in. You act holier than thou, you pray, then you leave, you go back to do your things. So I believe prayer is very delicate and faith is very delicate, and they need to balance. But sad reality is that is the easiest thing to get votes from.
But just how possible, and I want to be spiritual for a minute, how possible is it for someone to say that you will pray and then you become holy 100% the next minute? We all understand that is the system, that sometimes you will pray and you end up doing things that you do not want to do. Like, they say that, you find yourself doing things that you really do not want to do. And the things that you're supposed to do, you do not do. Because you are human in that moment. It does not say that in this point, I think I realize there's no essence of prayer, because after all, I'll do the things that I'm not supposed to do.
You see, in Islam, we are told that irrespective of what you do, if you pray to God and you're genuine and you'd like, we say, to be led into a straight path, then guide me to the straight path. You are seeking to be guided. But if whatever you're doing is a sham or is mockery, now that is totally different. I don't want to say what they're doing is a sham mockery, because I'm not in their hearts. All I'm saying is whatever they're doing should be genuine. all right? Because, yes, like I told you, prayer unites people, which is good. But if we could desist from issues of politics, from prayers, then we would move. Because at the end of the day, when you turn it, we have these things called Thanksgiving, for example, every Sunday. It's their Thanksgiving, you're supposed to pray. But it's always about mtu fulani muganga and fulani ajengi chikanisa. Who are you thanking at the end of the day? Because you're supposed to thank God. You're supposed to pray. But when it turns into a shouting contest, when it turns into an attack against the other person, so how are you praying? You know, you're supposed to pray for yourself and the other who are there so that you actually get a better life. So at the end of the day, my only issue is the politics they bring into prayer. It actually negates the entire thing.
And you know, Elizabeth has asked Mike Agungu whether we are to expect any form of politics. Personally, I would have said that perhaps nothing much about politics will play out. But according to Mike Agungu, that is one thing that has to play out for whatever reasons. But even before we get to that, you know, in the presence of our parents, we are children. Yes. You know, in the presence of your dad, you're a child. And so Moshendu here, in this context, is a child of a pastor, a reverend?
Yes.
So you acknowledge the importance and the essence of prayer, whether things are good, whether things are bad, whether tomorrow you're going to steal. And sometimes we're even told, my little boy the other day was asking me whether thieves as well pray before they go to steal.
Some do.
Then I did not know what to answer. And he pushed me further. And he said, if they pray, why is it that God answers them and, you know, allows them to go and steal successfully and, you know, come back home and say, Mungu amefanya kitu leo? I did not know what to say. Because then you are telling him that all prayers are answered. And on this other hand, you are also confirming that even prayers of bad people are being answered. So the way to get him to understand that aspect is difficult. So Moshendu, here we are.
You know, if people want to see and view prayers from a layman's perspective, you can, because what happens when that coffin maker goes before God and prays for business to flourish? In essence, what is he saying? You get. So a prayer is a very difficult kind of thing. But I will tell you, I do not think that politicians are always on the wrong when they go to prayer and they want to touch a bit of politics. I belong to a cell in my church called the Ebenezer cell that meets for fellowships every Wednesday, like today evening. Immediately we are done with our prayers, the next thing we find ourselves talking too much about is soccer, because all of us are enthusiasts of soccer. And that is one of the topics that will not lack after we have done what we do, we will speak about. If you find pastors, once they are done with church or with fellowship, the next thing they talk about is how they handle their washirikas and members and all those things, because that is what interests and it's within their confines. Now, it is absurd and honestly so far-fetched to believe that politicians will come and play and put a full stop there. Politicians will come and pray, and after they pray, the next thing they want to talk about is what they love doing. And that is politics. And therefore, I see a situation where I do not want to agree with Justina when it comes to budgeting, because this has been the norm, and Justina would make it feel like it is this government that has come up with those budgets to do prayer breakfast. For your information, prayer breakfast is funded by...
Is it constitutional?
It is actually funded by the National Assembly. It's the budget of the Parliament of Kenya that funds the National Prayer Breakfast. When you are talking about the national celebrations and saying that you want to scale down because money is being used, we cannot actually, in all fairness, decide that we will not do our national... I mean, if you look at Noldin here is the one who has done law, what it means to have a national holiday enacted in a constitution. It means that this is a national celebration. We are actually celebrating something. Maybe those of us who come from the hereditary of Mau Mau may have so much rest to celebrate about with these national holidays, because our our great-grandfathers never got to take home what they fought for. But the point here I'm trying to do is that today we come together as a nation to first of all thank God for the far that we have come. Because yes, the economy is hard and things are not working so well for most of the people in the country. But we have a reason to thank God today because this country is not in a civil war. Other countries are in a civil war. We have reasons to go before God and thank Him. And I find it in bad taste that somebody would preempt exactly what is going to happen in the players today.
Yeah.
Well, it is our responsibility as Kenyans to question government where we feel it's not doing the right thing. But we should not then allow ourselves to politicize everything, including a traditional prayer breakfast that has been held, I think, was it started, I think, at least I can say it has been held throughout the Kenyatta presidency.
Yeah.
And it is not something that is out of the ordinary. And I mean, yes, we pray every day. I personally believe I'm a product of prayer.
Yeah.
Because if my dad did not pray for me, other than disciplining me and also praying for me, probably I will not be where I am. So let us just allow them to be just prayers without looking into it so much and the budgets and what have you and happen. Because I will tell you.
No, let's take a short break first. We take a short break and then we come back on that very note. expected bigger, you know, Erdogan with all the pomp and color and having been an incumbent, you know, you want to go all out and invite so and so from across. And I tried to relate that to the inauguration processes in the African countries, our country. I think that was just within our building.
As a matter of fact, if you compare that one with the one at Abuja,
the recent one,
of the new president.
You understand? Yes.
If you compare that with our inauguration, that was last year, you compare that with inaugurations in Ghana and other places, we end up spending quite a hefty amount of money doing this thing. And I agree that one of the reasons that Kenyans are up in arms against the finance bill, it is that most of them believe that the executive or whichever arm of government is spending so much money on running government rather than doing projects. You realize that we have quite disparity in terms of court buildings in Kenya. Noldin will tell you here, but look at Embu. The Honorable Chief Justice just arrived there with one of the top Cream SUVs one can buy in this country. And I think one time back, the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, despite the fact that he and his family were not honest by bringing the VW, because they were also going to make money out of the fact that there are some of the people who own VW Kenya, they had a very good idea of narrowing down to what CC a leader should use. If you go to TZ just here in our neighbor, ministers are using vehicles that do not exceed 3,000 cc.
And on that note, Moshe, will allow us to cross over to Safari Park. Briefly, the president is in and we need to get updates from there. Then we come back on that, perhaps just get to understand what are some of these things that we need to cut on. So we can say we've cut on cost because we have to make adjustments, tighten the belt. And crossing over to Safari Park Hotel, so we can see what is playing out there. We have Elizabeth or Mike.
ihinda rĩrĩa rĩkoragwo rĩcetetwo Kenya rĩa ũndũire rĩa gwĩka igongona rĩrĩ rĩa National Prayer Breakfast, na mũthenya wa ũmũthĩ nĩ ngũkorwo ndĩna maũndũ pia ndĩreka thĩinĩ wa igongona rĩrĩ, na expectation ciakwa nĩ atĩ bũrũri witũ wa Kenya andũ othe nĩ megũkorwo makĩnyitanĩra makĩrehe meciria hamwe na nĩgetha mamenye atĩ bũrũri ũyũ ũratũbatara tũrĩ ithuothe na nĩgetha tũtwarithie na mbere, na koguo andũ matigakorwo makĩrehe ciaca iria itagĩrĩire, tũrehe oro maũndũ marĩa mangĩhota gũteithĩrĩria bũrũri witũ.
We pray, Father Lord, thank you very much for this day. Thank you for your goodness, your love, and above all that you've done to us, Father Lord. As we are here today gathered, we thank you, God, for meeting our physical needs of hunger and thirst. As we break the fast, may we be energized to serve you, Lord, to glorify you, and to be the good servants of our people of Kenya. Bless this as we take, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You may kindly take your seats. Your Excellency, the President of this great nation, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, Your Excellency, the First Lady, Mama Rachel Ruto, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Your Excellency, the spouse to the Deputy President, Pastor Dorcas, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, Speaker of the National Assembly and the Senate, the President of the Senate, Burundi Parliament, the Right Honorable Lord Michael Hastings, UK House of Lords, Members of Parliament, Governors, Cabinet Secretaries, visiting ministers from various countries, Principal Secretaries, Captains of Industries, all invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, sir, with your permission, allow me to now call on Honorable Samuel Chepkonga, Member of Parliament for Naikboi, to come and guide us on the rest of the program. Karibu.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and praise the Lord. Breakfast is now to be served, and then we will proceed thereafter. I thank you very much.
chuki na ugomvi lilete upendo.
In such moments, we also have to adjust, and I know shortly we'll be crossing over fully. That is for that session of prayer. So we join our leaders for these crucial moments as a country. And so briefly, allow us to perhaps take the closing remarks, not closing as such, but definitely just speak to it until, it's all systems go on the other end. Nordine, I know we're talking about the adjustments that we need to do, in relation to the events that we hold in the country and other adjustments that we have to because of the tough times. Your brief comments on that.
We just have to get rid of the big man syndrome. He was giving us an example of ministers. That's true. You find, I've seen several ministers with 6, 7, 8 fuel guzzlers disturbing people on the road. We really don't need that. We've seen some serious largesse. Actually, there was an issue where there's a minister who goes out with a chef out of the country to do what? So there are things that we need to handle, like the big man syndrome. There are some who've never been to these positions. So they get there, they're shocked. Hey, there's a flag. Oh, there's a chase car. Oh, there's this. Oh, I can misuse. So at the end of the day, in as much as we are trying to constrain ourselves into not for spending, we also need to check our leaders so that they realize that Kenyans don't have the money, and the money you're using is taxpayers' money. So if you can have some serious largesse and Kenyans can't eat, it doesn't make sense. That quickly takes me to Embu. Now, we saw a stadium, and I put it in quotes because that is not FIFA standard. And he said it cost 475 million. Allow me to use this word. That is bullshit. That stadium cannot be 475 million.
Disclaimer, okay,
Disclaimer.
Fine.
It cannot. What about it is 475 million? It doesn't make sense. And those are the things we need to question. An audit of that has to be done.
Right.
We know what you used and how much, so that we actually save the money, because Kenyans, like we said, Kenyans don't have money. And now we're in a process of tax the tax.
Right.
So you can't take everything. I heard the women rep for Nairobi yesterday say she supports the housing initiative because, according to her, she believes the slums need to be upgraded. Housing is not just about slums. And she went ahead and gave an erroneous explanation that she believes those who get paid 10,000 can pay 300. That's not a lot of money. Now that shows you the out of touch in reality. During the week, there was on the daily, the lady, the mamboga, that was used and dumped.
What happened?
Now, that lady says, on a good day, she gets 300 shillings. And here you're saying 300 is nothing. Doesn't that show you the leaders are out of touch with reality? So that is the problem. And once they adjust, then we can be able to salvage this country. Because if this continues, for how long? You'll be collecting taxes, but that money will be getting lost. You collect, and as much as you collect, but it doesn't fulfill the services it seems to fulfill. That's why we get Kenyans, some of them are like, why am I paying taxes? I don't see the benefit of it at the end of the day.
Right. Justina, and I'm glad that you mentioned the woman representative of Nairobi, and it got me thinking about some members of parliament allied to the Azimio side. In a statement, the Azimio side said, or the leadership at least said, that they will not be attending the prayer breakfast as much as they have received the invite. And originally, we have seen sometimes the opposition, joining in, because then this is a moment that we have to come together as a country also on some of these, events, national events. But this time around, they take a hard position. Perhaps on the peripheries, they might not going to hold, parallel prayer sessions or parallel rallies or parallel, events, but they will not show up. So to have others who have defied that, press release and proceeded to the meetings, and then to have some of them who say that they do not want to join on this. What do you make of that?
I think we are maturing as a democracy. The issue of chama ni mama na baba is moving away from the Kenyans. So it's a good thing that any legislature or anybody who is elected is seen to have a spine, to have a mind they can think for themselves. So it's good there's somewhat some freedom. But let me say, in terms of these prayers, it reminds me of the story Jesus used to tell us about the Pharisees. They were doing something just to be seen, but they were not clean. They were not clean internally. It was like that proverbial biblical cup. It is washed outside, but inside it's dirty. So we need to check ourselves as a country. And remember, Mushendu, when you say that it has been funded by the National Assembly money, that is government of Kenya money. National Assembly does, yes, it is our money as Kenyans. And Kenyans are saying, I've even seen comments right now when we went live. They're saying, wamehula, they have eaten. They are eating breakfast and we are not affording food. Mushendu, let me tell you, and you, my friend, and I've always told you, However much you love a political party, speak truth to that political party. The question of the day is high cost of living, unemployment, corruption. These are things that God will not come here and do them for us. He has given us a sound mind to do them ourselves. So this government should stop pretending and think that God will come here and do a miracle. He will not. When Kenyans tell the president, we don't want houses to sleep in, we want industries to work in, listen to Kenyans. Probably the advisors are like Mushendu who are trying to show him that he's doing the right thing. Tell the president the truth, that Kenyans are very bitter with him. Actually, Miguna was right telling the president that Raila is gaining ground on him. Because now the Kenyan is wondering, are you the same guy who promised us things and now you're doing things that you no longer care? How can you tell us that you are going to increase transaction cost on this financial bill on M-Pesa, or rather mobile money, from 12% to 15%, and then reduce bank charges from 20% to 13%? Whose interests are you serving? Are they the hustlers whom you promised? So all said and done, Oshendo, you have to agree that this government has not yet sought forgiveness from Mama Mboga and Mtu wa Boda Boda. They had promised them cabinet jobs, which they didn't give them. So are they now they're pushing them further into poverty? Mushendo, I know you speak to them. Tell them Kenyans are not happy. Kenyans are bitter. Kenyans cannot even afford to pay these taxes because there's no money circulating. No one is importing anything. I'm telling you that our dealer who sells us those machines was trying to entice us with a deal to buy something. We can't because there's no business. So the environment and the country and the business environment is not doing well. Mushendo, the only way we can say is that prayers will not change anything. In fact, the only thing it's going to change is going to land us into poverty because money is being used. But as of now, this government needs to focus on ensuring that Mama Mboga, Mtu wa Boda Boda, and every other Kenyan, because whether you have money or not, you're a Kenyan, they need to go into serving, doing what they promised Kenyans. And housing is not a priority for now. No one is sleeping outside.
Peter Moshendo, Ole Sapit.
I definitely
respond to Justina Wamai.
I definitely do not want to discuss Ole Sapit.
Well, not perhaps
and his dramas. His dramas. It does not make sense. It never made sense that you
not happy?
Yes, passionately support a regime and then tomorrow make a U-turn. Because
is that not
the Bishop or the Sapit did not make a U-turn because of the finance bill. That happened way before. It happened way before the finance bill came to the picture. Anyway, I just wanted to say that sometimes it's good to have an honest conversation. And I want to start with what Noldin has talked about the Embu Stadium costing about 450 million. I think if you ask me, at the risk of receiving bros from Kenyans, I think a stadium costing 450 million is probably correct. Because I'll give you an example.
You look at the before picture.
I'm saying this even without the seats people are talking about. Spending 450 something million on that stadium just sounds correct. And I will give you an example.
Well, for as long as accountability.
I'll give you.
Give us the accountability.
That's all you're saying.
You can, yes. Right. I think that is what they should be asking for, an accountability for that. But if I compare the construction of that stadium with another recently constructed stadium of a team in the UK called the Tottenham Stadium, it was recently constructed. It's like, I think, 2-3 years old now. That stadium has costed, in Kenya shillings, it has a capacity of 62,000 seats. It has costed 172 billion Kenya shillings. That's about $1 billion British pound. Now, if you compare that kind of spending for a stadium that is seating 62,000 people and with like 1,000 spaces of parking, and then come to Kenya and have a stadium that is going to have about a capacity of 20,000, costing 450 something million.
It's fair.
By all standard, when you talk about the FIFA standard, it may not be anywhere near the FIFA standard, but the cost of the stadium also says that it should not be anywhere near the standards of FIFA. And therefore, when we are talking about constructions of stadiums and saying that money has been badly spent, you need to look at the stadiums that you are doing in comparison with. How much are they costing? Today, go back and see how much money China spent in constructing the Kasarani Sport Complex. And I think sometimes we just want to bash government. How much money did the government of Uhuru Kenyatta spend in constructing Kerigiti Stadium in Kiambu, which is more or less the same with the current Embu Stadium? How much?
But that is not a justification.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying.
Yes.
If you want to say that government has misused money, we do what is called a comparative analysis of other stadiums that have those standards that we are talking about. I do not want, I am not the person who decided on the budget or released the money or the contractor who contracted the Moi Stadium in Embu. But before Kenya cast a stone on how much the stadium cost, it is very important to get what is called an accountability report. If you have a problem, have your member of parliament through the National Assembly request for a statement on how much money the county government and the national government put in that stadium. That is one. When Justina is talking about the government failing Mama Mboga, I have always told you, if you walk into a hospital and you tell the doctor that you have constant headaches, before he can actually prescribe anything or any form of treatment, you are first of all sent to go and get an MRI test to ascertain what is the root cause of your problem. Today, the Honorable William Ruto has to deal with the fact that the Eurobond that was not well spent, it has matured. It needs to be paid. The money we are talking about that belongs to the old people, it has not accumulated that in the span of 8 months. In fact, the money is supposed to pay for the last 8 months is peanuts compared to the debts accumulated by the previous government. The 20 billion they are talking about that have not been given to schools, it is an accumulation of deficits that were not, that were not given by the previous government. So when you want to judge the current president with his current financial performance, you have to look when he came to office, how much of the deficit did he inherit vis-a-vis what he has incurred himself against what the government has corrected. And I tell people, every tax that you collect goes to a consolidated fund where our loans are being paid from. So when people come and shout that the president has corrected this money, how much of that money has gone into paying loans incurred by the previous government? Those are things you need to look at.
Let's allow Nordin to
The reason why I brought in Embu was Article 35, access to information. You know, the thing is, we have to be realistic and we have to be honest. It's true. What he's saying, it's good that he's a football fan just like me. But you see, there's something called value for money. You cannot tell me in any form, I have played football, I can tell you for free. You cannot tell me in any form of value. That stadium is worth 475 million. Because at the end of the day, something will come up. What I told you the other week is, I've accepted that every government has a scandal. The difference is the magnitude. We have 5 years to see.
We have 5 years. Wow, I like the way you've summed it up for us. We have to cross over to the other side, Justina. We're going to have some other time. So let's cross over to that other side and join in the moment of prayer. I'm sure we're going to have more and more days for us to have these conversations. But as Nordin says, 5 years. Thank you.
To live peacefully with everyone as per your will. We ask for your guidance, wisdom, and for the grace to be faithful leaders in our nation. May the words that come from our mouths be words that edify the nation as united we seek justice and peace within our borders. Give the three arms of government the clarity to see your truth and decisiveness, to choose the course of action and the submissiveness that promotes the peace, love, and unity of this country. You are our God of reconciliation and the hope of our nations. Bring healing to our nation and restore trust and harmony. Forgive us for the times we have wronged others and those who have wronged us.